Hi everyone and welcome back to another video update. I missed them just as much as you did. Finally I'm back, and today I've got two big announcements to make. But first, let me tell you what I was so busy with in the past year, why it was so silent, and what I actually did in the last year. So as you can see, I'm in the land of waterfalls, Iceland. I actually got a crush on this country a long time ago and then decided to move here. Now I've been living here for half a year, and although it's already time to move countries again, it's really epic here. In some places really spectacular, and I even took the effort to learn a little bit of the language here. So this was one of the first explanations why I was a little busier, why you heard less from me, because I actually had to prepare the whole country move and start to feel at home here and so on. But I mean, just look at it. I don't think you can get that anywhere else on earth. Another thing was that I still had lots of responsibilities at my day job, and even though I limited myself strictly to 1 day per week, it turned out to be impossible, and I worked much more just because I had to basically hand over a complete project. But let's better talk about what I did manage to achieve, because even though I had to spend all of this time for work, I still had lots of time for Citybound, and basically during this year I reworked the whole engine from scratch, and what exactly that means I will explain to you next. So I started by rewriting everything in C++ and quickly realized that it would take me forever and I would go insane, but luckily I discovered Rust, a new systems programming language by Mozilla, which is as fast as C++ but much nicer to use, and it has a sprawling, very friendly community around it. So this is what I used as the base for Citybound now, and I implemented the basic version of my ideas of the actor system that I told you earlier this year, and I have that working. What that means is that stuff like scaling Citybound to several cores or even several computers in a cluster should be quite easy, and that even stuff like multiplayer within one city where people interact and work on plans together at the same time is not something crazy, but something that's quite doable. Furthermore, this system really provides a lot of flexibility, first for me to implement everything step by step and to keep adding features, but also for modders to completely modify how the game works or add completely new crazy stuff. So this is where I'm at now, this is what I have. But that's still kind of abstract. Only in the last month I got back to having something visible again, and this leads me right to the announcements, which are much more concrete. So the first announcement is really about how I want to interact with you as a community and how I want to develop Citybound. And I thought for a long time how I want to sell Citybound, how I want to make money from it. And I realized that even this model of like alpha, beta release for like fixed prices is really not flexible enough, and that I want something more open, something that can support the whole development of Citybound while keeping you in the loop as much as possible. So what I decided to do is this. First, starting today, Citybound is open source for non-commercial purposes. That means you can go to GitHub, look at all of the source code of Citybound, how far it is so far, see how I implemented every part of the game, see what I'm currently doing, what I will do next, and participate in like finding bugs, suggesting improvements, even implementing improvements yourself, or just getting the code and playing around with that. All of that will be possible from now on. Let's have a more detailed look at that and how that looks on GitHub.
So what you can see here is basically a rough approximation of what Citybound will look like on GitHub. This is still my private version because obviously I don't want to spoiler anything, but in a couple hours I will publish the full-blown public version of that. Here's already the most important bits, namely the source code of the game itself. You can look at that in as much depth as you're interested in. It's always the up-to-date version and the complete history, which you can actually see here in the commits. Here you can see every single step of work that I did on this new implementation of Citybound. You can see there's quite a lot here. And much more interestingly, you can see what is called issues, which is basically the tasks which I create for myself. I label them with different categorizations, not only to keep myself organized, but also in the future to help out people who want to actually contribute to the code, or just do something like report bugs or do feature requests, which will work all through the system. So this kind of gives you a good overview what I will work on in the future or what I already completed in the past. These issues are then organized into milestones, which are kind of my medium-term goals for the game, and I will create a more detailed guide and probably use this more and more in my communication with you to really keep you in the loop, both on a high level as well as in the really fine-grained detail, what I'm working on, what I want to do, and what I want to have in the game when. Also, this will be the new home of the Citybound wiki, just because I think that this is a really nice place to have all the centralized information about the game together. So all of this just a very rough overview, and at the end of the video there will be a link to the public version that we will all together use from now on.
Now that we saw open source, let's talk about the second part of how I want to do development and interaction with you. That is about how I'm getting paid. Because so far I basically relied on always having a second job, getting one or the other donation from you, which I was very happy about. In some cases I even asked for donations to get something specific, but my dream really is to make a living off of Citybound, so I can devote my full time to it, make the development as fast as possible, and spend all of my time creating this game together with you. So this is why I want to try something new, and it has to do with a page called Patreon. Patreon, millions of people follow their favorite artists and creators whose work they like and pledge a monthly amount that they want to pay them, often because there's a lot of fans for one artist or creator, coming up with an amount that's equal to what they would earn at a job, allowing these people to focus only on what they like to do best. And this is really what I would like to do for Citybound. So I'm basically asking all of you to become patrons for Citybound and to pledge, even if it's just a little something per month, where I know for sure that I will get it per month, like a wage, and then I can just focus completely on Citybound thanks to that. And there's a lot of stuff to do there to make the interaction between us even more interesting, like bonuses for people, for patrons and so on. I'm not sure what I want to do there yet, but I'm sure it will be something good, and it really feels like something that fits Citybound and this kind of ongoing long development where there's something interesting in between already, much better than the kind of alpha beta release model that I talked about earlier. So while I'm sure that we will figure out the details as we go, one thing is already certain. It's really important to me that I actually earn your trust and support. And I know that we all don't want Citybound to end up abandoned and meaningless like this train wreck here. And that requires commitments from you and from me. But I want to offer you to take the leap of faith and be the first one to put something out there repeatedly for you to try out and to judge at which point exactly it's worth your support and your money. So this brings us to definitely the coolest part of the video, the second announcement. Today you will be able to get what I call the Road and Traffic Prototype 1. The first kind of feature prototypes like I told you about earlier, where I implement an aspect of the game and give it to you to try out. This will cover first the road planning system and second the microscopic traffic simulation. The basic version of both were implemented on top of the new engine, and today, and I'm really excited about it, I give them to you to check them out, to try them out, and to give me your feedback. Let's take a look at that.
So this is what it looks like when you start it, pretty white and empty, but it's a whole canvas for you to do first one thing, and that is to plan pretty complicated road networks. So what you're seeing me do here is not building roads immediately like you would do in other sitting building games, but actually creating a plan of the roads that I would like to have. The nice thing here is that I have, for example, full, undo, and redo. I can change my mind. I can decide that no, I would rather not have this road at all, but have one over here, and I would like to continue this road over here. Then when I'm happy with it, I can implement the plan, and then it will actually build these roads for me. And you can see it created these roads. It created all the intersections, traffic lights and everything that's needed. Let's maybe add some cars and bring it to life. So I just spawn some cars, which will pretty much choose random starts and destinations in my fairly small road network here, and pay attention to these traffic lights. But what I really want you to understand is that these are not just some hard-coded intersection types, but you can do some pretty crazy stuff using very simple but powerful tools. Let's look at that some more. And what I can do, for example, is to create this fairly standard intersections, but then try to do some detailed changes to it. For example, let's try to create some bypasses and a little bit of a divider in the middle. And when I'm zoomed out like that, what I do here in the interface is I edit whole roads together. So I can shift this whole road over here, for example. But then when I zoom in, I get more and more fine-grained control. So now I can, for example, just select one side of the road and then say, okay, in order to get the divider, I would like to shift that over here. And you can see, if you look into intersection, how it can actually deal with that. At some point, it will snap into two separate intersections, but when they're close, it actually knows how to create this kind of divided intersection here. Let's take it even further and do the bypasses. So if I zoom in some more, now I'm actually at the level where I can edit single lanes, and I can do something like this. Say, let's delete this lane here, and let's delete these two parts here. And now I can try, you see again how the intersection adapts shape. Try to connect this here. Create this bypass like that. Connect, hold on. Connect this here. Have a kind of ugly bypass like that, but you see it doesn't really think in any kind of predefined roads with a certain number of lanes or certain types of intersections. It can really deal with all kinds of crazy situations. I could say, okay, no, but I actually want to have this closer to the center here, and you will see that when I build that it actually creates all the line markings correctly, and again, the traffic lights have phases that make sense for this particular intersection which I just created. And if I spawn some cars, a little crowded here, they will actually behave reasonably on this intersection. So yeah, the road interface and planning roads like that is of course really nice and fun, but the main reason I invested so much time and effort into re-implementing Citybound natively was because I wanted to be able to achieve the kind of performance that is needed to simulate really big cities. And the most difficult part for that is definitely the traffic simulation, so this is what I focused on for this prototype. I included this tool here that allows me to basically create this huge 10 by 10 grid where each grid cell is roughly 1 kilometer in length. All of the roads are 10-lane roads, so that's quite a big road network, and most importantly a lot of space for cars, because, let me start building this in the meantime, I actually ran out of space for cars to put onto the streets before the game became slow after some initial optimizations. And let me just show you how crazily many cars that is. As far as I know, the other city simulation games of the last generation can handle something around 60,000 cars at most, and I was able to surpass that by quite a bit. And this actually gave me hope to be able to simulate cities of millions of citizens, but let's actually try that out ourselves. You see, implementing this plan, building it, is a little slower than earlier because I basically forced the game to create this whole city at once, something that the player would usually build much more gradually, of course. And now we need to give it just a little more time because it's pre-calculating some pathfinding information and storing that in a really compact way, which will actually allow the cars to just look up most of the pathfinding information they need and not spend a lot of time on recalculating paths all the time, which in turn makes the traffic simulation run super fast. I'm just waiting a little more until the frame rate converges again and all the pathfinding information is pre-calculated. And now we should be able to just start spamming these streets with cars. So these cars which I'm spawning, they're not driving randomly, they actually have a fixed source and destination point on this road network that they're coming from and that they're trying to reach. And they're all interacting with each other. Let's just see how many we can do. I'm starting. Now I already have a little more than 60,000 cars, and you see here on this grid that's not that much. It still looks pretty empty. It's still running completely fluently. Here to give you an idea of the scale. I'm always rendering all the cars, I'm always simulating all the cars, even the ones that are not visible on screen. If I zoomed out even more, you can still see that there is just like the tiniest fraction of pixels. But that's boring, let's try to add more. So now we're at 150,000 cars, and that's as much as I can fit into this grid pretty much. They will already horribly gridlock each other, but you see it's still running perfectly smooth on a laptop here. Tried the same on my 2 to 3 year old MacBook Pro, on the very slight differences. So even on pretty humble hardware you can already run this huge amount of traffic simulation. And to just give you a rule of thumb, a figure that I found is that at any given point in time there's roughly 10% of the population of a city on the road as individual cars. So now at 150,000 cars, that would already be enough to actually accurately simulate a traffic simulation. Again, the computationally most demanding part of a city of like 1.5 million people. But of course, since it's still running so well, I wanted to see how far I can push it. And for that we will need to create an even slightly bigger grid, which takes again more time to build and more time to pre-compute. So I'll just skip ahead to that, to the part where we spawn cars, and just see how much we can fit there. So here we are with the 15 by 15 grid, so that's 15 by 15 kilometers you're looking at. If we're zooming in here to the street level, you really understand that this just goes on forever and ever and ever. This took quite a bit more time to build and pre-calculate the pathfinding, but again, keep in mind that I forced it to create all of this at once, something that wouldn't really happen during normal gameplay. So let's see how many cars we can put here at once and how well it will run. Now we're at 200,000 cars. They're just starting to move here from where they were spawned. You can zoom out, you can see it's still running pretty smoothly. That's around like 25 frames per second now, I think. And let's just, for the hell of it, keep going. Until it's completely clogged. Now we're at 330,000 cars, still running at quite interactive speeds, enough for a 3 million person city, again, just in this first implementation of the prototype. Keep in mind, by the way, that this is completely single-threaded, no multi-threading yet, but the code is written in a way that will make multi-threading super easy to add. So without being too optimistic, I think you can still expect quite the speed up from just throwing additional cores at the problem. So yes, combine this, in my eyes, already quite impressive performance with the flexibility of the road laying interface. I mean, this grid here is super boring, but it doesn't know that it's a grid. Each of these intersections has been created as a unique intersection, and it could be as unique as you've seen earlier when I showed how to create all kinds of crazy intersections. So in my opinion, this is just a pretty solid proof of concept on what I think will be possible with this native free implementation of Citybound. And this is what I'm giving to you today to try out on all three platforms, Windows, Mac and Linux. I can't wait to see first if it works at all for you, if it horribly crashes, then of course what you think about it. And I'm super excited to see where we will take this next together. And while we're enjoying the view of this huge grid of cars, let me just tell you that the last 2 or 3 months I really worked my ass off to get to this point. Probably worked 12 plus hours each day, didn't have any weekends whatsoever. I'm ripe for a holiday, but like I said, I will be more than excited to hear what you think and keep in contact with you until after the new year, and maybe after the first week of January, when we can really start to do the open source thing together and to do some planning what will be the next things that we want to implement. Here's a hint. It will all be about the basic version of economy built on top of this traffic simulation and road grid, also making use of native performance and so on, but we will see together. For now, this is what you're getting for Christmas, and I hope you like it. So have a very happy Christmas, have a super cool New Year 2017, and I'm very happy that you're still with me, and I think the future is just going to be more exciting than ever. With that, see you all soon. Wherever you saw this, let me know what you think. And by the way, I will also be back with live streams in the new year, I promise. Bye bye.